Hello everyone, welcome back to Coach Craig Sports. Today's going to be a little different video. I'm going to take a look at the NFL depth charts for the 2020 season. Going in, kind of just talking about each team, players I'm looking out for, players I might be targeting, players I'm kind of avoiding, any other news based on the team or player situation. So I'm going to start off here. This is going to be from the Huddle website. This is kind of like the best depth charts that I could find that was easy to look at. So we're going to go over each team. I'm not going to go over like all the backup players, but obviously, like you guys know, Kyler Murray is the starting quarterback for the Cardinals. Not too much to say about him. I think he's going to have a little bit better season than last year, but not as high as he's been even drafted. The running back situation, obviously, we're just looking out at Kenyon Drake, seeing how his walking boot situation turns out, if his injury is serious. Otherwise, if he's good to go for week one, I don't have a problem starting him there. Chase Edmonds is definitely a guy to take a late round flyer on or handcuff if you are drafting Kenyon Drake. Then you got DeAndre Hopkins, who's being drafted as top 5 wide receiver. I don't have a problem drafting him there. He's probably not going to finish as highly this year, just given how much they're going to throw the ball around and spread it out. Christian Kirk, somebody that's getting a lot of hype this year. Personally for me, I'm not as big on the hype just because there's only so many targets to go around. Hopkins is going to get his fair share. And I think Kirk's just kind of limited at what he got last year, especially with the next guy, Larry Fitzgerald, still probably going to get 90, 100 targets. I know he's older. He's not as effective as he used to be, but he's still a future Hall of Famer. Andy Isabella is another sleeper guy. He'll probably be their wide receiver number 4. Great speed guy. He's probably more of a DFS play or a late round stab, especially if you're in a real deep league. Tight ends, Darren Arnold's been getting a lot of hype out of camp. He did play decent when he was involved last year, and Kyler likes throwing him the ball, so he could be a sleeper tight end as well. Maybe somebody you pick up if you're in a super deep league. The Falcons, you got Matt Ryan's obviously the starter, no questions about that. Then they brought in Todd Gurley as a running back. Dirk Cutter said he will get 15 to 25 touches a game, so we'll just have to monitor that. Obviously, if he gets closer to 20 or 25 touches a game, he's going to be very valuable again. Obviously, a lot of it's just how his knee holds up over the season. He's got that degenerative knee, so it's never going to be 100%. He's never going to be as good as he was, but he still can be an effective back. Behind him, you're just going to have to watch out for guys like Ito Smith and Brian Hill. They're not very good. Probably wouldn't recommend drafting them anywhere unless you're in like a super, super deep league. And then Julio Jones is obviously going to be a top 5 wide receiver again. He's going to be drafted as such. Calvin Ridley could be a breakout star this year. He's going in the 4th round in a lot of leagues. He should see more targets this year with Austin Hooper and Mohamed Sanu gone. Russell Gage is kind of a late round stab if you want to take a shot on him. He's nothing too special, but if you're in a deeper league, you could definitely take a lot worse shots. Hayden Hurst is a great sleep. I can't even call him a sleeper tight end anymore, but he should work into the role, get a lot of them middle of the field targets that like Hooper was getting. I don't expect him to have as many targets as Hooper, but he's a lot more athletic than Hooper, so I think he's going to have a good year as well. We'll go down to the Ravens. Lamar Jackson's obviously a great quarterback. He was a quarterback 1 last year. He's going to be a top 2, 3 quarterback pretty much every year unless he gets hurt. Not too much to say there. Mark Ingram. So last year he just got over 200 touches, but they were winning a lot of the games pretty single-handedly. I think he's going to get about the same kind of workload as last year. J.K. Dobbins is somebody I do like, especially for later in the year. I've kind of talked about him a little bit, but I expect him to have more like a Miles Sanders type of role where he comes on stronger in the year, or if like Ingram would get hurt. Gus Edwards is still going to get touches. I think him and Dobbins are going to be pretty split, but there's not too much upside with Gus Edwards. You're only going to draft him in like a deep sleeper league, or if he happens to get traded. I know there was rumors that they were shopping him at one point. Supposedly Jacksonville was interested, so maybe with Fournette gone, maybe they bite the bullet on Gus Edwards and see if he's something. And then their wide receivers, pretty much the big guy here is Marquise Hollywood Brown. He obviously was great as a rookie last year. He only played 40% of snaps. He is definitely in line for a big breakout year. Then behind him, there's not too much there. You got guys like Miles Boykin, who's the second year. I know some people have been hyping him up. But like he played last year, he didn't get really many targets or catches. He wasn't very efficient. Maybe he does something more this year, but I doubt it. Willie Snead is a guy, he's not great, but they brought him back and he's going to get his targets. Devon Duvernay is the name to watch out for me here. He's a speed guy. He likes to play out of the slot. He had a very productive career at Texas. Even if he's not super productive this year, I think he still could be somebody to look out for the future. So if you're in Dynasty, keep an eye on him as well. And James Prochet, if you're in a Dynasty league, he's another name to look out for as well. But not so much for 2020. Mark Andrews is obviously going to be the top tight end this year. He's going to be playing more, so his stats should be a little bit better than they were last year. Boyle's obviously going to be an important blocking tight end in the scheme that they do run. But for fantasy, he's pretty much nothing. Go to the Bills. Josh Allen, he is being drafted as a top 7 quarterback. I see his ceiling kind of as a top 5 quarterback. This is going to be a big year for him in year 3. They added Stephon Diggs to the offense, so he's got Diggs, Brown, and Beasley. So he's got decent guys to throw to. Dawson Knox in year 2. So he should have a decent complement of weapons behind him, and we'll see how he does. We'll see if he keeps running the ball as much as he's been doing, and if he still gets them rushing touchdowns. That will have a great impact on his fantasy. Devin Singletary is somebody I'm not personally too high on this year. He's struggled a little bit in camp. I think Zack Moss is going to overtake the job eventually. So that kind of leads into Zack Moss. I like Moss a lot this year. He's the big power back. He's going to get some of the passing game work as well. And he's going to get the goal line carries. So out of this backfield, he's the guy for me to target. And he's going a couple rounds later than Singletary anyways. Personally, I've been picking up Zack Moss pretty much anywhere I can get him. Stephon Diggs and John Brown, they're similar players to me. Diggs is obviously a little bit more talented wide receiver. But they're not guys I'm going after in general. Cole Beasley would be okay in like a super deep PPR league. But otherwise, I'm not really looking to grab too many Buffalo players this year. Mainly it's Moss for me. Dawson Knox is a late sleeper tight end, especially if you're in a deeper league. The Panthers, so Teddy Bridgewater comes in. He could be a sleeper this year. Their defense isn't very good. They're going to have to throw the ball a lot. He's a guy that you can probably use streaming matchups, maybe week 1 against Oakland even. Oakland's secondary isn't the greatest. I know they've been adding more pieces the last 2 years to help improve that. Bridgewater and Joe Brady are a little bit familiar with each other because Brady was with the Saints when Bridgewater was there for a year as well. Then you got Christian McCaffrey. Not too much to say about him. He's the obvious number 1 pick. DJ Moore is a guy that I love this year. He had a great year last year, and I think he's only going to get better this year. If you watch my bold predictions video, Jeremy and I both had him as a top 6 wide receiver in our bold predictions. Robbie Anderson's a guy that he comes in, he's going to stretch the field for sure. And then Curtis Samuel, we'll see if he can actually break out this year or not. He's pretty much a post-type sleeper at this point. But if he gets some targets, he could be productive week to week. But he's not a guy I'm going to be counting on, on an every week basis either. The guys behind him here, the Pharaoh Coopers, the Seth Roberts, these are guys that are just kind of been bouncing around for a while. They did sign Cam Phillips this week. He was great in the XFL, and we'll see how much run he gets, but he could be a guy to look out for maybe in a dynasty league if he ever gets some run. Then we got Ian Thomas, the tight end. With Greg Olsen leaving, he walks into a pretty good opportunity. He's fairly athletic. I can't remember if it's his 2nd or 3rd year in the league now. He's a guy, he's pretty much just a late sleeper, but he's going to be one of them guys that you're probably just going to stream in a good matchup. He's not a guy I'm going to count on week to week. The Bears, you obviously got Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles. We do not know exactly who's going to be the starter. Matt Nagy said he's pretty much going to hold out on that information until week 1 or probably right before the game. Personally, I think Foles will end up starting, or if Trubisky starts and Trubisky's bad, Foles is going to come in again. If Foles is the starter, I like the offense a lot more. If Trubisky's the starter, I think the offense is pretty much close to what it was last year. David Montgomery was a guy that I liked a lot coming in the year. He's just getting them guaranteed touches. But he has that strained groin now, so he's going probably around round 5. Now he's going probably closer to round 7 or 8. If you want to buy low on him, it's fine to do it there, just depending on your roster construction already. Tariq Cohen's a guy to buy going into this year. Last year he wasn't as productive, but he could see some more touches with Montgomery out early. And just depending on how they use him in the offense, he can work his way into a little bit bigger role again. These other 2 guys, they could be a factor week 1, week 2, depending if Montgomery's out and if they don't bring anybody else in. Leonard Fournette is a guy they could bring in. And if he comes in, then you just kind of have to be all out on Montgomery. Just because he's not going to get enough touches to matter. Allen Robinson had a great year last year. A lot of people love him going into this year. If Trubisky's the quarterback, I could see him doing fairly well again. If Foles is the quarterback, he'll be a good wide receiver, but he's more like a wide receiver like 16 range to me. Foles typically likes to throw to the tight end into the slot wide receiver, which moves into the next guy, Anthony Miller. He's probably going to play the slot. He's excelled in the slot in the past. He's just a great wide receiver. He's never been fully healthy, and I think this is really the year that he breaks out, and he's one of my favorite breakout players for this year. You're probably going to see a combination of Ted Ginn, Ridley, and Mooney on the outside, just as kind of deep burner threats, but none of them are going to mount to anything. Cordell Patterson will see some like trick plays. They've been working him out as running back as well. He won't really matter in fantasy as well. Neither of these two tight ends I like. Even though Foles likes to throw to a tight end, I think they're not going to be heavily targeted, and they're going to split the targets. I do like Kmet kind of for a dynasty league, and Jimmy Graham's pretty much washed up at this point. Joe Burrow is a guy that I love. Joe Burrow in general. Do I love Joe Burrow for fantasy 2020? The answer is pretty simple. It's just no, because no rookie quarterback just comes in and lights the world on fire pretty much. We haven't really seen a rookie quarterback excel since like Andrew Luck and RG3 fantasy-wise. Like, yeah, Kyler Murray was all right last year, but he finished as quarterback 7, but there was weeks where you couldn't even start him because he wasn't going to help you win. You're better off just streaming the position. Joe Mixon, somebody I love this year. He's my running back 5. I'm really big on him. He just got his extension yesterday, and I think he's going to get more of the passing game work. I think they're just going to work Gio Bernard out of the mix almost completely at some point here. AJ Green, if you get him late enough, he's worth buying, because if he stays healthy, he'll be good. But he hasn't stayed healthy in over a year and a half, so I don't really see it happening. Tyler Boyd is a guy I love. He's finished a wide receiver 2 the last 2 years. Great out of the slot. He's going to get a lot of targets. Zach Taylor likes him. Joe Burrow likes him. I think he's going to be good. T. Higgins is more of a dynasty play for me. He could have some value this year, but his value comes down to like if AJ Green and John Ross get hurt to me. Like John Ross is a guy I love this year. 8 games last year he had 500 yards, over 500 yards, a good amount of touchdowns. If he stays healthy, I think he's a guy that Zach Taylor wants Burrow to throw the ball to in this system. Burrow is obviously a better deep ball thrower than Andy Dalton was, so that only helps Ross as well. Auden Tate is kind of a sleeper here as well. When everybody else was gone in practice, he's actually built up chemistry with Burrow. Last year he actually got a decent amount of targets when he was playing, so he could be a guy to watch out for, but you're not drafting him unless it's a super, super deep league. Drew Sample and CJ Uzama are both the tight ends. Neither one of them are going to have any value in fantasy. It'll be interesting to see how Sample develops. They did pick him in the second round last year, so there could be more to him there in the future. Baker Mayfield, obviously, I think Baker Mayfield's going to have a bounce back year. This is a good system for him to be in. They're going to run a lot of play action, which Baker excels at. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are going to be the 2 running backs here. Chubb, I'm not as high on this year. I got him at like running back 12 or 13. He had a great year last year. Kareem Hunt being there is just going to cut into his touches. He's not going to see as many carries as he did last year. He had 298 last year. He wasn't very good in the red zone. There's just a lot of factors that are going to limit his production. I do like Kareem Hunt this year. It's kind of like a flex play where he's being drafted. He's fine there. And then if something ever did happen to Nick Chubb, then he'd obviously blow up. Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry. I'm not too high on either of these guys this year. They're both going to get their targets. They're going to be somewhat productive, but right now they're both going a little bit higher than I personally feel comfortable drafting them. Then the third wide receiver, it could be Rashard Higgins. It could be Tywan Taylor. Donovan Peoples-Jones is not even on this list, but he's probably the other guy to look out for out of Michigan. He's a real big athletic guy. Great value for Dynasty. Austin Hooper, David Njoku. I'm not really too high on either of these tight ends. I think they'll be all right. But for fantasy, like, you can do a lot better. It's more like a streaming tight end at that point. Dak Prescott's obviously going to be a top quarterback with all the weapons around him. Not too much to say there. Zeke's going to be one of the top running backs, top 3 pick in pretty much every draft. And Tony Pollard, if you're drafting Zeke, I'd go out and grab Pollard. If you're a person that thinks Zeke's going to get hurt or Pollard's going to get more work this year, go out and grab him as a deep sleeper as well. Amari Cooper, I'm not buying Amari Cooper this year. Like, he's going too early. He's going like wide receiver 9 in ADP. He's just so hit or miss. And then they bring in CeeDee Lamb. So he's going to lose some targets that way too. I do like Gallup where he's going. I think he could be a little bit of a value. And then CeeDee Lamb I like as well. If something happened to Gallup or Cooper, he'd obviously move up in targets and yards. But altogether, like the three of them, they're going to eat into each other's work a little bit. But Randall Cobb did have like 80, 90 targets last year. Jason Witten had like the same. Blake Jarwin's a guy I like a lot this year. He's going to work his way up into that Jason Witten role. And he's a better player at this point in his career than Jason Witten was last year. So he's a guy that's definitely a sleeper tight end this year. With Denver, Drew Lock, I know a lot of people are hyping Drew Lock up because he's got all the weapons around him. I don't see Drew Lock being worth anything in fantasy unless you're like in a super flex. The games he was in last year, they pretty much handcuffed him. I think they're going to want to run the ball. They brought in Melvin Gordon. They still got Phillip Lindsay. They're going to want to run the ball first. Then they're going to want to throw the ball second. So Melvin Gordon's a guy I'm not drafting personally because they said him and Phillip Lindsay are pretty much going to be splitting carries almost 50-50. And like where Gordon's going like the fourth round half the time. Like he's not a value there. He's my running back 27. I'm not drafting him unless he's outside the top 6 rounds. Cortland Sutton is a tough one for me. I love his talent, but he's probably going a little bit too early for me. If you can get him as your wide receiver 3, I'm fine with that. When he played with Drew Lock last year, he didn't get targeted as much, and there's just more mouths to feed this year. Jerry Jeudy comes in. He's obviously a very talented, polished rookie. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a good dynasty player, but I don't think he's going to get enough volume to matter this year in this offense. Between them running the ball, handcuffing Drew Lock, trying to play defensive game, and having targets to go around. To me, he's like a guy that gets 90 targets. He probably gets around 60 catches, 700 yards, a couple touchdowns. He's not somebody that's going to help you out in fantasy. I could be wrong. There's a lot of beat reporters coming out of camp that really like Jerry Jeudy. They think he's going to be really good this year. But it's just hard to come in to that role that he's coming into and really explode, especially in year one. KJ Hamler, he's already hurt with a hamstring injury, so I'm not too worried about him. He was only a deep sleeper anyways. So this one is real hard, but if you're in like a deep league and you need a sleeper, Tim Patrick could be somebody, especially if Hamler's injury becomes something else. Every time Patrick's played, he's been halfway decent, but he's had a lot of injury problems of his own. Noah Fant is somebody a lot of people like as a sleeper for this year. He's very athletic. He's a decent tight end. He'll be all right, but I don't see it this year. Maybe next year. Tight ends are usually more of a year 3 type of thing. Then bringing in Albert O behind him. He's somebody I like a lot for Dynasty. He's already got that chemistry with Drew Lock. They played in college together. They did well together. He's a great red zone goal line tight end target. And I think some of that might hurt Fant. They might play 2 tight ends a little bit more this year and be able to use both the athleticism of Fant and Albert O. Detroit Lions, I love Matthew Stafford this year. He's going like quarterback 13 last year in points per game. He was 4th when he was playing. Like his back is healed. It's behind him. He's going to have a great year. Deandre Swift is a hard one for me. He wasn't somebody I was particularly high on. If you could get him like as your running back 3, running back 4, I was okay with it. But just him splitting work with Kerryon Johnson to start the year at least. And Swift with the injury of his own, it just bumped him down a lot for me. Kenny Galladay, where you had to pick Kenny Galladay, I'm not sold on the value. He's a great player, but anything before the 3rd round is a little too early for me. Obviously, they got Marvin Jones behind him. Marvin Jones actually averaged more targets per game when Stafford was healthy. Then you got Danny Amendola running out of the slot. He'll be all right. He'll have his games here and there, but he's not somebody you want to roster on a weekly basis unless something happens to Jones or Galladay. Quintez Cephas is a guy to look out for, especially in Dynasty. He is a wide receiver out of Wisconsin. He's got good raw skills, but he's probably somebody that's going to take a year or 2 to develop. TJ Hawkinson is a guy I like more for year 3, but he could have a role this year. He could be a streaming tight end on a given week as well. Then we got Packers, Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to get drafted too high just based on his name. The system they're in wants to run the ball a whole lot more. It devalues Rodgers, especially in fantasy. He's going to have his games where he's going to throw 5 touchdowns, just like he did last year. He's still a good quarterback, but he's not great for fantasy in the system he's given. We've got Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones obviously had a career year last year. I think he can be similar as good. He probably won't score as many touchdowns, but he's not somebody I'm writing off at all. He's a very, very talented running back. A.J. Dillon comes in, the second-round pick that they spent on him. A lot of people are hyping him up, but I don't see him get more than 5 touches a game. I think he'll score a couple touchdowns, but he won't really work. He really won't eat into Aaron Jones' role. So personally, he's not a guy I'm drafting in 2020. But in Dynasty, I do like him a lot because I think Jones is going to leave after this year. Jamal Williams is another guy. He's just a guy. If something did happen to Jones, then I think he'd be worth something. But otherwise, he's not. He's nothing to me. Devonte Adams, he's obviously a top wide receiver. He might lead the league in targets. He might lead the league in touchdowns for receivers. So he's somebody that obviously you want to buy if you can get him in the late first round, early second round. Not too much to say there. All these other guys are pretty much, if you really think one of them is a sleeper worth grabbing, you can go grab him. Allen Lazard's got a lot of hype. MVS has got a lot of hype. St. Brown's got a lot of hype out of camp. It's kind of like pick your poison. Like Lazard's probably the guy if you're going to take that sleeper. But we'll just have to see how it pans out this year. Sternberger is a tight end sleeper. He didn't play much as a rookie. Second year tight end. Tight ends usually don't break out till their third year. So he's not somebody I'm particularly targeting. Desean Watson is somebody I obviously love. I'm a Texans fan. But I love him this year for fantasy. He's getting my quarterback 3. He's going to have to throw the ball a ton. He's going to have to keep up in games. The defense is not what it has been. I think he's going to run a little bit more. He's got weapons that got speed. He doesn't have Hopkins anymore, but he has weapons that are quick and he can throw the ball deep, which could put up big fantasy points. He might be a little more volatile this year, but he's somebody, if I can get him where I'm comfortable getting him, I'll grab him every time. David Johnson, I don't love this year. He's not a good scheme fit. Duke Johnson already does pretty much everything David Johnson does, but better. Higher yards per carry, better pass catcher. So Duke Johnson is the guy I'm buying. I'm not buying David Johnson because if he's ineffective or he gets hurt, Duke's just going to take over. Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller. This is kind of the debate. They both go in the same range. I love Fuller personally. I think this is the year he stays healthy. Not everybody remembers, but 2 years ago he was actually on. He missed week 1. Then he came back. He played about 6 games in a row, I believe it was, and he was doing great. He was looking really good. He goes to score a touchdown in the end zone. Miami defensive back takes out his knee after he's crossing the end zone line, tears his ACL. Not everybody remembers that. Look at last year. He had one of the best fantasy games receiving for a receiver in history. The dude's got talent, and you can't teach talent. He's been working on his body. He's been working on staying healthy. This is going to be a big year for him. Even when Hopkins was there, he averaged 7 targets a game. So just say he gets 9. If he gets 9 or 10 targets a game, there's no way he's not going to go off. It's all just about health with him. Randall Cobb's a guy I like as a deep sleeper. Yeah, a sleeper if you're in a deep league, pick him up. Could be an okay PPR guy. Kenny Stills is pretty much just if Cooks or Fuller gets hurt. And then all these other guys are just guys. But Brandon Cook, we'll go back to Brandon Cooks real quick. I'm not sold on him. If he gets one more concussion, I think he's just done. The tight ends here, Darren Fells is kind of a sleeper for me. The Texans did target the tight ends of the bunch last year, but they did use 2 or 3 tight ends. Fells is a beast. He's 6'7", 270 pounds, former basketball player. He's old. He's not quick, but in the red zone, he's a great target. So he's a guy, he could secretly end up with 10 touchdowns, but I don't know how much he's going to help you in fantasy because you don't know when his touchdowns are going to come. Then we go to the Colts, Phillip Rivers. I'm only drafting Phillip Rivers in a super flex, and he's still like on the low end pull for me in the super flex. Probably like my 3rd quarterback if I'm taking 3 quarterbacks in a super. Well, I'm going to take 3 quarterbacks in a super flex regardless. I think he'll have an all right year. He's got a defensive offensive line. He's got decent weapons, but he's not somebody I'm betting on. He's more of a streaming quarterback if you're in a 1 quarterback league. He has a great matchup. You can play him then. Marlon Mack, not sold on him. I think he'll do decent at the beginning of the year. I think him and Taylor will split the carries pretty early on. I'm targeting Taylor if I can get him for a reasonable price, but he just keeps moving up draft boards. I think he'll have a decent year, but he's going to split so many carries. He's going to split carries early on with Marlon Mack for probably at least the first 4 games, and that just hurts his value too much for me, at least. Naheem Hines could be a decent PPR guy as a late round flyer. Phillip Rivers obviously likes to throw the running back. He's been highly efficient at doing it. Look at Danny Woodhead. Look at Austin Eckler. But Hines is not Eckler. He's not really Woodhead either. He's a decent pass-catching back, but that's all he is. He's just a third down back, and you can't count on him week to week. T.Y. Hilton's somebody I'm avoiding this year. He's just old. He's hurt all the time now. He's already hurt. He's being drafted too high for his real value if he does end up playing. Michael Pittman Jr. and Paris Campbell. I like these two guys. In some of the mocks I've done, you guys have seen me take Michael Pittman Jr. and Paris Campbell together. One breaks out, you keep them. If the other one doesn't, then you drop them. I think they both have a ton of potential. They're both kind of targets that Phillip Rivers likes throwing to as well. Jack Doyle could be a sleeper tight end. He's probably a guy you want to stream more in a good matchup. Trey Burton could make an impact. I know Frank Wright has talked a little bit about him, but when he's been given the chance, he hasn't really performed. Jacksonville has turned into a mess. They might be tanking for Trevor. That's what people say, at least. For me, I have a hard time seeing them completely tanking when you got a 6th-round quarterback who's going to play his butt off because he knows he's going to lose his job if he doesn't do anything. You got a coach that was almost fired last year, was told until he walked into the last game, and the owner said, "Hey, buddy, get me through this one, but you're gone after this," pretty much. And then he didn't get fired. I think they're going to play all out. They might tank because they're not good, but I think Gardner has a lot of upside this year. He's like a low-end quarterback 1 for me, high-end quarterback 2. If you're in a super flex, he's somebody I'm trying to grab. He's going to throw the ball a bunch. He has decent rushing upside. Jay Gruden coming in is going to help him out tremendously. Chris Thompson, somebody that I'm targeting in PPR. Raquel Armstead is probably going to be the 1st and 2nd down back. He might get some of the goal line carries, but he's not somebody great. I'm probably not targeting him till at least the 9th or 10th round. If I'm in a standard league, I'll probably grab him, but in PPR, he's not the best value in the world either. DJ Chark, I do like this year. I think he's going to get a lot of the red zone look. He's going to get a lot of work in the red zone. Westbrook is a guy I'm excited for. He's gotten over 100 targets in back-to-back years. They're moving him back out to the outside. He's got great speed. If they can fully use him on the outside like he was at Oklahoma, he could be a guy to look out for. Laviska Shenault, he will be very interesting. He's a late-round sleeper if you want to grab him there. I think they'll use him a little bit in the backfield, might give him a couple handoffs, just try to move him around the field and see what he can do there. He's more of a guy probably better for Dynasty, but he does have some value this year and could turn out that way as well. Colin Johnson is a guy more for Dynasty. He's a big, tall receiver. He's pretty quick for his size. He was kind of banged up at Texas, but he could have a solid role in the future. Tyler Eifert is a guy I love for this year. They don't have anything behind him at all. He was healthy for the first time in forever last year. Besides DJ Chark, they don't have anybody to go. They don't have anyone else to go to near the goal line. So he could be a touchdown machine. He's got a pretty good matchup. You don't have he could be your last pick in the draft. He could have a great year. We'll just have to see. I know Gardner's got a lot of chemistry with him, or the reports coming out of camp at least. But Eifert's really a guy that I do like for this season at least. And if you're in Dynasty, Eifert's free. You can get him pretty much round 30. And he's got a 2-year deal, so even if he's good this year and good next year, in Dynasty, that's worth something. Or if he's good and you just trade him off for a 2nd-round draft pick, that's worth something in Dynasty even. Patrick Mahomes is obviously Patrick Mahomes. We don't have to say much about him there. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, like I said, I've done videos talking about him already. He's a top 10 back for me. He's got upside for more. It just depends on how much work he gets this year. Tyreek Hill, I think they're going to spread the ball around a little bit more this year. He's not somebody that's super high on my list. I think I got him wide receiver 7. McCole Hardman, Watkins, one of them I'm fine with taking a sleeper on. As a late round sleeper. They could pan out. Not sure which one it's going to be at this point. Kelsey's Kelsey. We don't need to say too much more about that. Derek Carr is somebody I love as a streamer this year. He's somebody I love if I'm in a 2-quarterback league. He's just got so many weapons around him for almost the first time in his career. Josh Jacobs is getting a lot of hype. He's not somebody I take unless it's in the 2nd round, mid-2nd round or later. He's my running back 12, I believe. I just don't see him getting the passing work, especially when they brought in Lynn Bowden Jr., when they brought in Jalen Richard, when they brought in Booker, when they brought in Reddick. All these guys that are great at catching the ball. Plus, they have all these other weapons to throw to. I don't see him getting the work. Bowden Jr. is interesting for Dynasty. I think he's probably going to get 4 touches a game, whether it's a handoff or a reception this year. I don't see him doing much this year, but in the future, he could be a good weapon to have. Henry Ruggs is obviously great for Dynasty. He's a decent flyer pickup for this year as well. He could be their wide receiver 1. Bryan Edwards is a guy I love right behind him. For me, Edwards is going to be the wide receiver 1. He's a freak. He's just like a prototypical wide receiver number 1. They got him in the 3rd round, which is a huge steal. Like, he was great at South Carolina. I just don't see how he's not going to be great. Like, I might be a little too high on him personally, but he's just a guy that I love. And if you're in Dynasty, go out there and get Bryan Edwards everywhere you can. Hunter Renfrow will be all right out of the slot. Darren Waller. I like Waller this year. I think he'll score more touchdowns, but I don't think he'll have as many targets per game either. So he's a guy that he's a middle-of-the-road, solid tight end. Like, you know what you're going to get with him. You can start him pretty much every week and feel comfortable. Tyrod Taylor's a sleeper in like a super flex league. You can probably stream him week to week if he's got a good matchup. We'll see how long he remains the starter. Herbert's a guy I do like for Dynasty, but not for this season. Austin Eckler, I like Eckler this year, especially in PPR. I think he'll get a couple more carries a game. Look a little bit more like what it was like before Melvin Gordon came back. I'm not high on Justin Jackson this year. Joshua Kelly is a guy I love. He's going to be a goal line machine. He's got a lot of hype out of camp. I think he takes over that Melvin Gordon role, and he's a guy that's great for Dynasty, great for this season. I think he's a guy that can build around in the running game. Keenan Allen's a guy that he's moving down a lot of draft boards. I think he's got okay value. He's going to be decent, but he's not going to be as good as he's been in the past. Mike Williams is a guy that you can take as a late round flyer, deep sleeper. He has a ton of potential. He's a great in the goal line, big play threat, but he's already hurt. If you have like an IR spot and you're able to put him on that until like week 4, that's fine. Otherwise, if you feel comfortable stashing him on your bench, he could pay out big. Behind them guys, they don't have too much. Joe Reed, KJ Hill, they could be good guys for Dynasty. Jalen Gooden, he's been getting a lot of hype out of camp. We'll have to see if any of that amounts to anything. Hunter Henry was somebody I wasn't too high on until Mike Williams got hurt. But after Mike Williams got hurt, I moved Henry back up a little bit. He's kind of like behind Waller for me. He's kind of like in that middle round tight end range. Like if you can get him in like round 9, I'll take him there. But otherwise, he's not like anything I'm going crazy for. Jared Goff, I think, will have a decent year. He's just a streamer or a super flex guy for me. Their backfield's a mess. I don't really want to touch any of these guys. Henderson's probably my favorite of the bunch. I think he's the best player. Not sold on Cam Akers. I've been saying that for forever. Malcolm Brown's probably going to get most of the touches week 1. He'll probably have a decent week. He'll probably be the number 1 waiver claim after week 1. Then he'll probably not do anything for like the rest of the year. John Kelly's another guy to watch out for. Vay said they want to use a committee. Cooper Kupp I'm fine with. Robert Woods I'm fine with this year. Going where they're going, there could be decent values. Reynolds and Jefferson are both the sleepers. Whoever gets that 3rd tight end job could end up having value. Van Jefferson's impressed a lot in camp. His dad's a wide receivers coach for the Jets. Alshon Jeffrey, he actually played in the NFL himself as well. Higbee I'm not sold on. Too small sample size last year. I like Jared Everett as a sleeper as well. Everett did play well before he got hurt and Higbee came onto the scenes. Fitzpatrick, you're only taking as a super flex or streaming him in a great matchup. Do not like Tua at all, especially this year. I don't even love him in Dynasty. I don't think Tua is going to be a good fantasy quarterback. I don't think he's going to be a good NFL quarterback. He was a product of his system at Alabama. He had so much great talent around him, and that made life easy for him. Jordan Howard, I do like a lot this year. I think he's going to get the bulk load of the carries. He's going to get a lot of goal line work, and he's a guy that is a solid running back 3. He's a guy that's a flex play. He's a guy that you can plug and play on your bye weeks. He's very underrated, and you can get him in like the 8th round a lot of the times as well. Parker, I think, will do all right in the beginning of the year. He's kind of got a little injury already, so that's something to monitor. I do love Preston Williams this year. Their 3rd wide receiver is just kind of a mess. It might be Gary Jennings here. It might be Jakeem Grant. It might be Isaiah Ford, whoever plays out of the slot. Gesicki is a decent sleeper this year. He had a lot of targets last year. Didn't have quite a good catch percentage on those targets. He's super athletic, but he didn't break any tackles. Chan Gailey's tight end normally doesn't do anything, so we'll just have to see how that plays out for him. Kirk Cousins is just a super flex QB, a streamer guy. He's not somebody you want every week. Dalvin Cook, I'm not buying Dalvin Cook like anywhere this year. I'm not sold on him not holding out for the contract. I'm not sold on him not getting hurt. I love Madison. A lot of times you can get Alexander Madison in the 11th or 12th round. If you can do it, go grab him. Because if something happens with Cook, if he holds out, he's a free running back one pretty much. Thielen I love. Justin Jefferson I love for Dynasty, but not this season. Old BC Johnson's probably going to start week 1. So Jefferson's just going to come along slow. Then I don't really love any of their tight ends. They're just going to eat into each other too much. Irv Smith is decent for Dynasty, especially by the time Rudolph moves on. Cam Newton I love buying low on. Quarterback like 16 in most drafts. If you can grab him there, he's a great pickup. Even if he's your second quarterback, if you're in super flex, if he's your second quarterback, you're set. The running back situation is a mess. James White is safe. But then you got Sony Michel, Damian Harris, Lamar Miller. Like, they're just going to eat into each other, so I'm not crazy about any of them. I do love Edelman. I think he's a value this year. Then we get down to, like, who is the other wide receiver that's going to have value this year? Is it N'Keal Harry? Is it Mohamed Sanu? Is it Jacoby Myers? Is it Gunnar Olszewski that's getting a lot of hype out of camp? A lot of people are drafting Harry. I don't think Harry's going to be that good this year. Sanu, I don't see why they would trade a second-round pick for him if they didn't plan on using him. But Sanu and Edelman are both best used out of the slot, so that kind of hurts their values. And then Jacoby Myers is a guy I love. He was undrafted free agent out of North Carolina State. He had pretty good numbers when he played last year. Didn't score any touchdowns, though. He was great in the preseason last year as well. He's been nursing a shoulder injury, though, so that's something to really monitor. Then the tight ends, you got Devin Asiasi and Dalton Keene. Dalton Keene's name's not on here for whatever reason. I love Asiasi for Dynasty. I think he'll be all right this year, but he's just a streamer tight end for this season. Drew Brees is fine where he's getting drafted. He's steady Eddie pretty much. Alvin Kamara, you obviously got to monitor this holdout talk now. So just be careful where you're drafting him. Latavius Murray, depending on what round you get him, I love him this year, especially if Kamara does happen to hold out or get traded. Michael Thomas is Michael Thomas. You don't need to say too much there. The rest of the wide receivers, not too crazy about. Emmanuel Sanders, you guys have already heard me talk about. Not crazy on him. He's not going to get enough targets this year. Cook's an all right tight end, but he's probably somebody you just want to stream more than anything. Or if you're taking him, take another tight end along with him, somebody that can break out. Daniel Jones, don't love this year. Like, everybody's like, oh, it'll be like Jameis Winston last year. Well, he's got a worse schedule than Jameis had last year. Probably doesn't have the same amount of talent around him as Jameis did. He's probably pretty close, though. Saquon, I like this year. He's obviously got the tough start to the year. But I'm drafting Zeke over Saquon, just personally. I love safety myself, especially in the first round. Golden Tate is a late-round flyer that I really do love. He's great after the catch. He's a PPR machine. Sterling Shepard's one concussion away from never playing again. Then Darius Slayton obviously had the good rookie year, but we'll have to see how he does in his second year. Cory Coleman, he was a bust. If something happens to one of these guys, he gets hurt, maybe he has some value, but not anybody you're targeting. David Sills down here. If he works his way into targets somehow, he could be something. I would never draft him in redraft, but like if you want a dynasty stash that's probably not going to kill you, take a look at him. He has a really interesting story too. He was a quarterback that got a scholarship offer from USC when he was like 13 years old. Then USC didn't honor the contract or honor the scholarship. Then he went to West Virginia. Then he ended up playing wide receiver. He scored a bunch of touchdowns as a wide receiver at West Virginia. Evan Ingram, I'm not high on this year. You guys already know that. Caden Smith's a guy that I love to stash for Dynasty. He had a great chemistry with Daniel Jones when they played together. I'm not convinced they keep Evan Ingram long term. Maybe they even trade him. Sam Darnold, I wouldn't touch with the 10-foot pole right now. All his wide receivers, like everybody on the team's hurt. Adam Gase screws everybody. So, in general, the Jets, the only person I'm drafting is Jamison Crowder in PPR leagues. I'll draft Le'Veon Bell if he falls to the 6th round or later, but that's about it. And I'm just hoping Le'Veon Bell gets traded, but nobody's going to take on his contract. Carson Wentz is a guy that he's one of them quarterbacks. You can grab him probably about quarterback 9 or so. He's a guy that's going to be a steady Eddie. You can play him every week. He's not going to hurt you, but he's never going to win you a week either, really. Miles Sanders, I do like his upside this year. I believe they did say his lower leg injury was a hamstring injury now. He should be good to go for week 1, but if he's not, look up Boston Scott, because Boston Scott is going to go off. Boston Scott, you can usually get like in the 11th round or so. He could have a lot of value in PPR. And then if Sanders is out for any period of time, Boston Scott could be a major factor. Then you got Deshaun Jackson. I like him this year as a deep sleeper. Jalen Reagor was a good deep sleeper until he hurt his shoulder. So I'm avoiding him now. In Dynasty, he's probably okay to have. Then Al-Shaan Jeffrey. If you want to grab him, hit it with your last pick, go ahead. Still has the pup next to him. He is practicing, and he's probably going to be back probably like week 4. Then Greg Ward's a guy I like as a sleeper, but he's probably somebody you're going to be able to pick up off your waivers anyways. Ertz is going to be all right, especially with all the injuries to wide receivers and possibly Sanders. Goddard's not a guy I'm personally drafting, but in Dynasty, he's a guy that I do like a lot as well. Ben Roethlisberger, he's a guy if I'm taking a high upside quarterback too. If I'm taking 2 quarterbacks, I'll grab him as well. If you're in a super flex league, grab him. If you're in a 1 quarterback league, you can stream him in a great matchup. He's got a great matchup week 1 against the Giants. James Conner has all the talent in the world. But what does James Conner have also? Injury problems. He already said Benny Snell's going to be the direct backup to him. So if you're in a league where it's deep enough, go ahead and grab yourself a Benny Snell. Supposedly showed up in really good shape. Anthony McFarlane Jr. is a guy that I do like a lot. I like him more probably for Dynasty. He's an electric playmaker. Could be fun to watch, especially working with Big Ben out of the backfield. Then Juju, I think, is going to have a fine year. Deontay Johnson's a guy that I do like a lot this year. James Washington's not somebody on my radar. Chase Claypool's been getting a lot of hype out of camp. I think he could have a decent rookie year. I think he's somebody that you definitely want to grab in Dynasty, though. He's just he's a beast. He's a physical freak. His comp at the Combine was, Calvin Johnson. So if you got mini Megatron over here, that could be pretty good. Then Eric Ebron, you guys know I like as a bounce back candidate. Vance McDonald, I don't think is going to get much run. And then Russell Wilson's obviously Russell Wilson. He's going to be great. Chris Carson, I think he'll have a good year if his fumbling and his injury problems don't get in his way. Hyde is the backup. If you want a late sleeper, Hyde's fine. In Dynasty, I'm going to pick up DJ Dallas in Dynasty because I think that he does have decent upside. He's a converted wide receiver, so he's a great pass-catching back. He's still learning the running back position, so I think over time, he could turn into something. I'm not guaranteeing that's going to be great, though. Lockett and Metcalf, I both think are going to do well this year. Metcalf's not going to break out as much as people think he will, but I think he'll be decent. He's just getting drafted a little bit too high for me. And then you got the third wide receiver with like a Phillip Dorsett or a Paul Richardson. So somebody that's got some speed that's probably going to play on the outside or in the slot. Lockett's probably going to play in the slot when you go to 3 wide receivers anyways. Lockett is a beast, and I got Lockett down as a top 8 wide receiver for this year. Tight ends are a mess here. You got Greg Olsen, the old veteran, Will Disley. If Disley ever stayed healthy, he'd be a tight end 1 guaranteed. Probably one of the best tight ends. So if you're in a deep league or a dynasty league, pick him up. I like Parkinson a lot for dynasty as well. Out of Stanford, I think he could be decent. Jimmy G is a guy you're only picking up in a super flex or if you're streaming in a good matchup. Mostert's got a lot of hype this year. I think he'll be all right, but the backfield just hurts him so much. The running back by committee. Coleman, pretty much avoiding unless you get real late. McKinnon could have some value as a late round sleeper, pass catching back. But my guy here is Jeff Wilson Jr. He's the guy I love. He's always been good around the goal line. He catches the ball. His tape from North Texas is good. Like, if he ever gets the opportunity, this guy is going to go off. So, like, in Dynasty, I've stashed him pretty much in every single Dynasty I'm in. Debo, I don't love Debo this year, but if you get him where he's a value, I don't mind taking him there. I think he's going to miss some time. Brandon Ayuk, I like more for Dynasty. This year, he was going to have some value, but then he pulled his hamstring. Kendrick Bourne for early on the season, if you want to take a deep sleeper, him and Trent Taylor are good ones. But then they brought in a whole bunch of guys, Tevin Austin, Kevin White, J.J. Nelson, all these nobodies. Jalen Hurd was somebody I loved a lot. He did tear his ACL. If you can get him in Dynasty, I'm still going to grab him in Dynasty leagues, though. If he ever stays healthy, I think he's going to be a great fit for Shanahan's scheme. George Kittle, I obviously love. Everybody loves George Kittle. I don't know anybody that could say anything bad about George Kittle, honestly. Tom Brady, I think he's just a low-end quarterback one this year. He's got good weapons, but I don't think he's not going to be more than a top 8 quarterback. Ronald Jones is a guy that I like. He's been moving up draft boards a lot. I think he has a good year. McCoy's not going to factor in too much, but he'll get some touches here and there. Vaughn's probably more for Dynasty, but I'm not the biggest Keyshawn Vaughn guy in general. Then they got Daria Agumbawale and TJ Logan. Agumbawale is just a pass-catching back. Logan's not going to make the team. They also got Raymond Calais out of Louisiana Lafayette. Little short guy. He's super quick, super electric. If they could find a way to get the ball into his hands, let him kick return, I'd love that. But supposedly they're going to have Vaughn kick return, which I don't get at all. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, they're pretty good. Scotty Miller's been getting a lot of talk out of camp, and Tyler Johnson's a guy I love, especially for Dynasty. I'm not crazy about the tight ends this year. I actually have Cameron Brate. Like, if I was going to pick one of these tight ends that had the best year, I'd probably pick Cameron Brate. I know Howard's getting a lot of love in camp as well. Ryan Tannehill could have... He's not going to be as good as last year, but he could still be a solid quarterback. Low-end quarterback 1, high-end quarterback 2. Good for Superflex leagues, good streamer quarterback. Not going to hurt you. He's got a little bit of rushing upside as well. Derrick Henry, obviously Derrick Henry's Derrick Henry. He's going to eat. Darrington Evans is a guy I do like for Dynasty. I loved him for Dynasty before Derrick Henry signed his contract extension, but that kind of put a nix on that. The other guys behind him are awful. I didn't even know Jeremy McNichols was still considered an NFL player. A.J. Brown, I think A.J. Brown, he'll be a top 20 wide receiver for sure. He's an electric player, and there's nothing behind him to throw the ball to. Corey Davis is on his last legs in Tennessee. Humphreys is great out of the slot. If they went to 3 wide receivers a lot, I think Humphreys would have a great year. And I think Tannehill is decent at throwing at the slot wide receiver, but they just don't use the slot enough. Jonnu Smith I love a lot. They're going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets, and he's just super athletic tight end. Has a great chance to break out this year. He could be this year's Darren Waller. And we got Dwayne Haskins, Alex Smith, and Kyle Allen. I don't think Haskins starts more than 8 games this year, so quarterback position I'm pretty much staying away from for them guys. Peterson, if you can draft him late in the draft, he's a decent running back 4, flex play, bye week filler guy. He's not going to hurt you, but he's not going to win you any weeks either. And that's the way you got to look at him. Gibson has a ton of upside. Gibson, I think, is better for Dynasty than this year. He's an explosive playmaker, but he's not a polished running back. He's very, very raw. Bryce Love, I do like for Dynasty. I do like a little bit for this year. There are some concerns saying they might hold him out of games because of his injury history, though, and want him to be fully healthy. Wide receivers is kind of a mess. Terry McLaurin's obviously the bona fide stud, number 1. Pick him up anywhere. If you got Dynasty League, you might as well pick him up as well. Steven Sims is kind of a sleeper, and then Gandy Golden's a sleeper too. Goldman's probably a better Dynasty stash than anything. Logan Thomas is the sleeper at tight end out of this group, but he's a converted quarterback out of college. He's finally looking like he might turn into something. So in a deep, deep league, you can take a stab on him. Maybe in Dynasty, you want to take a stab on him as well. But overall, these were the depth charts, just my thoughts about each team, all the players that are on their depth, all the relevant players that are on their depth chart, whether I like them this year for Dynasty, kind of a little outlook on all of them. I know this was a longer video. I hope you guys took the time to enjoy it and just listen to my thoughts. I really appreciate that. I hope that you really gained something from this video and that you can apply it to your leagues going forward. But with that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this video. If you guys liked and enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, I know there's a lot of you that watch my videos that aren't already subscribed. I would appreciate it if you consider subscribing. The subscribe button is down below. With that being said, if you're a new or current subscriber who hasn't already done so, please hit the notification bell as well. It'll let you know every single time that I post up a video. I'm going to be putting out a lot of fantasy football content in the coming days and the coming weeks as we go forward to the first game of the season, obviously. And then throughout the season, I'm going to be doing streamers, waiver wire picks, We're going to be talking some DFS. I'm going to hopefully get one of my buddies on who's pretty good at DFS, I would say. And then we'll just talk about good values for the week. If you guys have any thoughts about this video or anything like that, leave it down in the comments below. If you need to get a hold of me for any reason at all, please reach out to me at coachcraigsports@gmail.com. Check out the Facebook page, Coach Craig Sports. Follow me on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport. Also check out the Fantasy Football discussion group. I'll leave links to all of this down in the description below. But with that being said, that's pretty much all we got for this video. I hope you guys all enjoyed and have a great rest of your day.